around the year of 2023 in my second year of college when I took interest in the topic and read not only an article but an official research paper. I was stunned and amazed as it pretty much described how different my brain operation felt in comparison to others. Sadly, I didn't look too deep into the depth of neurodivergency that states this. Basically, the standard brain, considered neurotypical and on a scale can slowly move from typical to something a little different, then into basically neuro, 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 neurological disorders. I basically dislike using the term disorder as brought to my attention by reading some books and self-reflection that some neuro, neuro, why does this stump me? Neurological conditions under neurodivergency may not be necessarily a problem, but just how some different mental constructs receive, process, and act on information. In this year of 2025, dear Lord, I discovered I have ADHD, and I believe my love of media such as TV, movies, and books have discovered that part of me way before my informal diagnosis. The Librarians is a TV show based on a trilogy of direct-to-DVD movies called The Librarian, and is easily one of my favorite and most earliest TV show fixations. I mean, there's other shows like Terra Nova, Revenge, Tomorrow People, and Haven that also was obsessed with watching, but The Librarians has always coveted a special place in my brain. This show is basically a ghost in the current era, but in its heyday, the show was actually not that popular, but my 7-year-old self wasn't aware of that. It was a freaking good show that takes two elements I love combined but separate, not so much. But it's kind of enjoyable for me is sci-fi and fantasy, especially if you set it in urban environments. Basically urban fantasy but with a unique spin, since this show did come out at the time when urban fantasy shows were running the TV networks. Supernatural, Lucifer, Pushing Daisies, and any other show at its heyday was something I ate up with glee, and The Librarians was a cherry on top of that pile. Librarians follows a cast of new characters joining the world of the library as they become the librarians that protect the library and its artifacts while tracking down any source of magic and bringing it down to the library. Cassandra Killian and autistic Matt was Ezekiel Jones, the world's greatest thief. Jacob Stone, the cowboy historian. Then Eve Baird, who's actually the guardian who protects and advises the librarians. And finally, you have the legend himself, Flynn Carson.
How did you know all that?
The librarian who made me realize that I have ADHD. Flynn Carson was a nerdy character that was created to be a polymath who uses his pretty solid skills and range of knowledge to solve problems. His character was a typical intellectual archetype whose intellectual strength is emphasized as a base of masculine performance. In literature, the base aspirational archetypes are broken into two broad categories: the warrior and the mystic. I'm using pretty simple words to describe something which is traditionally seen in folktales and stories that are contrasted against each other and re-explored in many forms of narratives. If I'm correct, Chinese literature has explored and became aware of the dual archetypes, created terms for it: Wu, which is basically brawn or strength, and Wen for smart and wise. I don't think I have to explain which one is Flynn Carson. Flynn Carson is basically a peak representation of the Wen in modern cinema, which is the intellect wizard mage. Technically the old wizard dude from the Lord of the Rings would be considered that, but I love the show more than that, so yeah. I always loved Flynn Carson as a character and was kind of the main reasons I always wanted to be a polymath way before I knew that concept. Even though that I've never went to multiple universities and college, though I watch a lot of YouTube videos on programming, 3D graphics, and learning languages. I actually learned, especially from going to college, that I hated academia compared to Flynn Cost. So when rewatching these movies, I could see a little difference between him and I. After I was done with the movies, I moved on to the TV shows, and that's where everything began to click. Just to let you know, canonically, the show doesn't acknowledge or state that Flynn Carson has ADHD, but I remember having a random thoughts when trying to write the librarian's video essay that I kind of realized that, isn't Flynn Carson like ADHD? So as a responsible male, I decided to find books on ADHD, YouTube videos, and websites. That late evening with a book in my hand, I read the first chapter of the book, and first thoughts that I had was, wait, I think that's me and Flynn Carson. I actually have ADHD. That feeling was the worst and best feeling I ever experienced. And I think that feeling is something someone who is diagnosed with any neurodivergent condition has experienced. It literally felt like a flash of memories and strange whirlwind of the worst and best emotions colliding. Having that experience for the first few days took me out, as I was just reading the books while reflecting on my past, so slowly came back to the original inspiration of what I was actually doing. Flynn Carson is me. If you didn't notice in media, ADHD is always presented through characters like Bart Simpson. Childish, energetic, impulsive, and a troublemaker.
Wrong hands, eh? That's your cue, boys.
That archetype of ADHD representation isn't bad, but it's actually a narrow depiction of ADHD representation. That's the part of the reason why people tend to see ADHD as a form of behavioral problems, which was mostly pushed when the public misunderstood the scandal against bad diagnosis due to bad acting by medical industries to push Adderall on many kids as possible. If you didn't know about the late 90s towards the late 2000s, a lot of people questioned and discovered the way neurodivergent traits are diagnosed are not only properly implemented but had a tendency to be vague. Therefore, a lot of kids who may not had ADHD got diagnosed, which caused a backlash of false medical diagnosis standards to be re-examined, only for most of the public to misunderstand the situation and create the harmful myth that ADHD doesn't exist, as medical industries wants to push Adderall for profit. ADHD is just a behavioral problem, so those children had to be raised under a steady hand. So as a kid growing up, I've considered myself ADHD due not only to the stigma, but also since ADHD as a concept was narrowed as just a behavioral problem. When I discovered Flynn and myself, I realized what my ADHD was and what challenges I faced due to my type being less, not only necessarily popular, but not well known. Mine is more of an inattentive ADHD type, which is not really special, since any with ADHD has inattentive or hyperactive. It is just that some ADHDers may struggle either of the two elements way more than the other. Flynn Carson is terrible at paying attention, especially at social situations, creating the strange blindness where he is great, picking unique and new details out of a puzzle but cannot pick up basic social skills. I've almost struggled in basic social situations due to my inattentiveness. Mainly situations I would say something that was considered bad or just rude. Most of the time was something vague or gray area stuff that someone with neurotypicalness would worry about. Inattentiveness makes it difficult to pick up on social cues when it is mostly useful, so you'll make dumb mistakes and jokes. Flynn Carson is something that also makes ADHD very impressive and strange as a condition. People with ADHD have a tendency to do a little thing called hyperfocus. To describe hyperfocus is to compare it to basically a flow state where you basically are so focused at a task at hand, with a little takeaway that hyperfocus can pretty much lock an individual into a state where they cannot redirect their attention or perform any other task. Some of us forget to eat, which is something I do struggle with, except peeing. I mean, do people in ADHD in hyperfocus pee themselves? I don't think I need to know that. When rewatching the show, I realized that Flynn had a consistent issue of handling his impulsivity, but also exclusively hyper-focused on tasks or missions. And throughout the seasons, we basically watch Flynn, Carson disappear from the cast either due to vigorous studying or investigations. We basically always find him in a state of mental lock, and while he looks like he's never seen sunlight or touched water for a week.
Look at the swords of the knights. Roman short swords. Author's wearing the equipment of a Roman legionnaire. It's the Roman. I bought this. There's only one problem. Painting's a fake. Look. This color red, it's a dye.
Also, Odd, it can't be moved. This frame's anchored into the beam. You'd have to smash down this wall to move it.
10111010. There's a binary code engraved into the frame that you can't.
The point is that this is
No,
a
this
fake.
type of security is not used in Europe.
Okay.
I don't think
It's like listening to the inside of my own head.
Hyperfocus seems pretty awesome and great, but can derail ADHDers' goals or daily tasks to maintain a good, healthy life. I've always found ADHDers may lead one of the worst life imbalances. Either they work really hard or hardly at all. It is something we notice with the comparison from Bart to Flynn, is that Flynn works hours spent in his interests even to the starvation, but Bart struggles to even do or stick to his favorite hobbies or interests. Moving back to how inattentiveness can ruin social situations, then I want to discuss how ADHDers are prone to be loners from their social lives and work lives. Many elements play a part into making ADHDers become loners due to hyperfocus, which can make it difficult to work with others, as your brain is moving at infinite speeds with infinite voices booming in your head. So when someone calls you, you just respond with what, or sometimes just a blank look on your face. The ADHD brain is not focused, but the dots in your brain basically is multiplying and causing you to go near overheat mode where sensations feel overwhelming, which can cause ADHDers to develop sensitivity to sound or genuinely being overwhelmed by environments similar to autism. Watching Flynn struggle to work with other brilliant librarians made him snap, as the situation overwhelmed him, as his own thoughts in his head was basically making backflips with other people's thoughts colliding with his own thoughts, then causing him to just snap. I've personally discovered why I struggle to work with others, as while I try to solve a problem, that switching tasks to other common tasks like communication or listening can be quite difficult when your mind is zero in to handle one thing at a time. I thought that's just how I was, only to discover and learn that other people who have ADHD struggle with this. Here we have the most popular character who will enter the list of characters that killed the show after they exit, Nathan Young.
What did you do?
I sexually assaulted a 90-year-old woman.
It's hard to discuss without honestly saying out loud that he's a dick. The slick wordsmith is known for unpleasant antics that can make him as annoying as well liked.
Oi, Nathan, I need your help. Are you taking a shit? There's a guy over here taking a shit. Stop! Would you like me to grab you some toilet paper? I'm not. Go. Have a good one.
Nathan can be the most fun person to be around, only to become the most irritating dickbag in the world. It is a sight to behold, but pain to experience. Nathan has always been my favorite character from the show, not only from an entertainment perspective, but that I kind of relate to him. Telling the world that you relate to Nathan Young is basically suicidal. It's like a woman saying that I relate closely to Rebecca Bunch. Something not to be said out loud around normal people. As a person with ADHD, pattern recognition is weird because it's mostly an unconscious thing that happens. It can be engaged consciously, but it's mostly uncontrollable. It can show in numerous ways socially, like saying random enlightening things, or saying the weirdest, funniest known thing to mankind. Clever with words isn't really an ADHD trait, but I always find in fiction that characters who are ADHD coded or exhibit symptoms are known as pretty funny, clowny characters, basically.
We're not so different, you know. We are completely different. I'm gracefully tall, you're freakishly short. Where do you get this stuff? I don't know, it just comes to me. I have a gift.
I is the undiagnosed ADHD kid that's always finding the wisecracking characters the most relatable, and bonus points if they seem laid back or lazy. Nathan Young is a classic example of a young man with ADHD that's failed by society and his family. He copes through humor and general young adult fun that he sees as a rite of passage. Nathan Young brilliantly wears a mask of being normal, but isn't afraid to step past the boundaries to disturb societal rules. Nathan is from a home where his mother and father barely took care of him and grew into a cynical young man, filled with word vomits flavored with spite and irony, ready to spew on anyone who engages with him. Nathan does grow mellow and becomes more likable through a friendship with Barry. Here's another thing. I can talk about the autistic and ADHD pairing that I'll just call the AUHD POW syndrome. No, dynamic. Syndrome couldn't work. Simon is clearly autistic coded and basically becomes Nathan's closest friend.
Come on, Barry. Who's Barry? You are.
His name is Simon.
As mentioned before, Flynn Carson has ADHD and our autism queen, Cassandra Killian. These two pairings are similar but illustrate interesting dynamics, with the first pair, Flynn and Cassandra, showing a unique relationship where they both have inherent understanding and mutual love for each other. I even sometimes say Flynn is literally Cassandra's father figure when you watch how they interact and speak with each other. The latter is literally just toxic with each other, Nathan being an absolute bully and dick due to Barry's lack of being normal. I could go deep and say Nathan bullies Barry because of his neurodivergency, which can be attributed to his unconscious shame of his own or Barry's lack of ability to mask himself. Over time, they both grow close and become best friends. I just find it strange that the AUHD pairing happened in two of my favorite shows. I wonder if someone has spotted this phenomena in other shows and movies. When it comes to Nathan, I want to discuss masking. If you don't know what that term is, it is a term that describes how people with neurodivergent conditions could create a social facade or a character they inhibit to seem normal on screen or outside. Masking can be great at first, but they really destroy those wearing it. There's a lot of people in the neurodivergent community who discuss how draining and destructive the act can be to your mental health. I can definitely say confidently that Rebecca Bunch in Crazy Ex-Girlfriend is a perfect example of someone who has a mask, and in the first episode can see her basically half dead. There's a reason that it's not something recommended or something to be stopped. Nathan Young is a bit of a folk hero in my mind, as he barely masks and allows his ADHD condition to display. I couldn't help to love that aspect of him as someone who was at college watching the show. I was basically undiagnosed with ADHD, who was masking, and I was slowly falling into a deeper hole of depression. I think watching Nathan bring himself around people who would hate him is something awesome for me. I mean, I always thought that I could be one day be myself and get the chance to show myself a little bit, but it would always just get people away from me. Every chance to feel accepted was just a moment to remind you that you don't really can get happiness. It would be difficult to discuss Usagi since I'm not the biggest fan of Sailor Moon, but I did watch Bishoujo Senshi Sailor Moon, but that's the live action title. And how I ended up watching it is very interesting, but I ended up watching the show because I actually fell in love with watching the original Sentai Shinkenja Samurai show. It was just glorious, and after it ended, I needed something to supplement my slim tokusatsu diet and ended up getting the Pretty Guardian Sailor Moon live action series. Yeah, it's not really a good explanation, but I really don't care because this shit is so fire. It's such a good show. No wonder women wanted to be probably an average 13-year-old Japanese woman or any woman, because damn, the media for women in 2000s is so good. Fashion, music, TV shows, top of the line. And PGSM for me seems like the peak of that era. If you haven't realized, since it has been years since you probably watched the show, I think Usagi is kind of ADHD coded. I mean, she's forgetful, struggles to focus, struggles academically, struggles to start or finish any task, always seems to be daydreaming. I mean, if you don't believe me, there's even a Reddit post by some user basically outlining with evidence that Usagi has ADHD, and that in a comment someone actually compliments with the theory that Chiba Mamoru is autistic. Hey, something to consider. Hey, I personally love Usagi as her ADHD representation feels and looks more enjoyable than the ones I was exposed to. I think I find it interesting to watch a TV show with someone with an undiagnosed neurodivergent genuinely find a group of friends who actually love her as she is. Usagi-chan is clearly a growing girl who's developing slowly, emotionally and mentally due to ADHD, but with a support structure that helps her along the way. I mean, all three characters from different fictions have a common need of a community that not only accepts who they are but supports them. I mean, all these three characters from these different fictions have a common need for a community that not only supports who they are but supports them. Watching Makoto forbid Usagi from thinking of tuxedo mask may on the surface seem cruel, but she does it to Usagi, who struggles to understand the weight of her role in the entire war. Or when Sailor Mars Ray basically challenges Usagi every time she tries to make a decision to push Usagi to be a bit more attentive and caring of people around her.
この間出た宿題せっかくやったのに間違ってノート捨てちゃったんだよね。あさって提出なんだけどコンテストもあさってだし、これやってたら準備間に合わないよ。お願い手伝って。じゃあ4人でページ数割って私はお断り。え？
うさぎ、自分の失敗は自分で取り返さなきゃ。すぐ人に頼るのは良くないわよ。
Let's not make any impulsive decisions. At the end of the day, Usagi is also with a friend group who needs her, as she's basically the heart of the group. I always find that having ADHD is always a burden, or seen as a burden. Like in media, autism and ADHD is always seen as a gift that benefits the user to an extent that sometimes it just harms everyone if you're not the most intelligent and most forgiving person, or just intelligence. That's basically the main trait they focus on. It's never really inconvenience, but has an harmful effect when it comes to having those conditions. In Sailor Moon, Usagi is actually more of slight inconvenience, but people do want her in her life. Seeing an ADHD person feeling wanted and not brushed aside is a nice sight to behold. I'm not saying people who have ADHD don't feel needed or wanted, but the minds can convince them. If you don't know, RSD, rejection sensitivity dysphoria, is a condition that basically makes it difficult for neurodivergent people to determine situations if it is a rejection, or will sometimes just assume a rejection, which follows a huge emotional pain. Usagi has a tendency to fall hard for someone like Chiba Mamoru, but after being disappointed, she'll immediately try to distract herself after the pain of rejection by chasing tuxedo mask. Usagi struggles with emotional regulation, which can make her pre-existing struggles even more difficult to tackle.
画面じゃなくてに合わせたんだよね。
Watching Usagi go through bouts of emotion can be annoying or just depressing, as you wonder how tiresome it can be bouncing off the wall with the same thoughts replaying in their heads. Sadly, you can't really stop it, and some learn to get used to it. I personally love Usagi's representation a bit more than Nathan, but I still have my boy Flynn at the top, especially when you consider that most women with undiagnosed ADHD are pretty much unseen, and they themselves don't know if they even have the condition. Assumptions of female traits being conditioned by their mothers at a young age, and the more underrated and more plausible reasons that women may just have been an attentive type way more than men is primarily the reason why they're probably not detected. How should I end this video? Well, to let anyone know is that I'm mostly a game developer. I make games. I have a game on Steam which you can wish list in the description. I'll even throw the trailer at the end of the video. And if anyone's wondering, I'll continue to make more videos. I don't know, it depends. But yeah, that's it.